What's up, everybody? Welcome back. We're here with some more PGA DFS picks and lineup advice for DraftKings and FanDuel, this time for the Mexico Open down in Mexico. Welcome. I'm Brian Jester, co-founder here at Occupy Fantasy, and I'm joined by our PGA DFS analyst at Occupy, Niromada. Niro, what's up, man? How are you?
Good, Brian. We had a good week last week. Very different event this week, but I always like our edge in these weaker field events. So looking forward to this week down in Mexico.
Absolutely. So, for those of you who are new, welcome. What we're going to do in this video, as we do every week here for PGA DFS events, we will review last week's plays and our hits and misses to see what we can learn from last week. We'll talk about the top plays in our Occupy model, our data driven model for the Mexico Open this week. We will look at which players will receive bumps in ownership and who sharper DFS golf players will be on in high stakes contests for DraftKings and FanDuel. And then we'll close it out with some early market movers and an integral showdown tip for those of you playing round one through round four contests this week. So, Nero, let's talk about last week now, the Genesis. And as we said last week, typically we have struggled in some of these shorter events. These we called it a no-cut event last week. It did turn out to be a cut, obviously, but a limited field event. But our model and the daily plug nailed the winner last week in Ludwig Aubert.
Yeah, first of all, thank you to all of those who correctly lit us up in the comments for that. I had it corrected when I wrote the plug, but for some reason I missed that this was the one signature event where they cut it down to top 50 and 50 in ties. But yeah, it was, excuse me, it was nice to have Ludwig get the win. You're very hot on picking the cover image, Brian. How many wins is that so far this year for you?
Three or four, the cover boy streak lives on. It's crazy.
Yeah, as I said to you, if only you could run so hot in DFS as you are running right now and picking the cover image for the plug.
Yeah, that is exactly right. We had Thomas Dietrich 2 weeks ago, Ludwig Oberg last week. But also, not just our content, Nero, the third component of our analysis at Occupy Fantasy for Golf DFS are the market moves. And last week, the market moves were elite.
Absolutely. It's I talk about it often. I view all this as like ingredients in the soup. The market moves is the final ingredient, but it's one that I weight very heavily. And if you look at them, Cantlay, now Fleetwood, all of them finished T5. Rory was T17. He didn't kill you, but he didn't help you win anything. And then only two misses. So Minwoo Lee was 48th, and Matt Fitzpatrick was 49th. But they both still made the cut. Nine of the top 11 in the model made the cut. Again, it was harder than you would have expected. The 6-6 percentages were lower, much lower than I would have thought they would be in such an event. So again, if you stuck to the top of the model, used a little bit of seasoning there with the plug picks and then the market move stuff from the Wednesday update, I think you would have been in good shape to have a very good week last week.
For sure. And we saw a good amount of screenshots in our Discord from winners from our members last week. So we'll look to keep that moving forward. And like you said, just 20% of lineups got 6 out of 6 last week when only 22 players were cut, which is pretty insane. So goes to show the importance of ownership in DFS, Nero.
Yeah, absolutely. Like, it's one of the smaller the event gets, I would like to think the more importance you have with game theory. We certainly see it a ton with Tour Championship, which is the smallest event that they have all year. I think the difference, with these signature events is that Scheffler has dominated or dominates them so much that you don't like the traditional building style or the build that the average DFS player would like to do has so often been the right build because of how well those guys at the top have performed. But last week, we had what I would call a traditional week. Oberg, who was the lowest, well, slated for the lowest projected ownership of all the top players, perfect game theory play. He comes through, he wins. All of those game theory style leveraged builds move their way up to the top.
Exactly right. And we're going to look to replicate that this week in a much different event. And as you look at the model this week, if you're a member at Occupy Fantasy, this is a true sickos week because we'll have a lot of guys who typically are not priced this highly, typically aren't in the top 20 of any models, and a good chance, unless you play PGA DFS religiously, you may not even know many of these guys. So It's a sickos week, and we're here to help you break it all down. And Nero, really looks like none of the top 25 players are in this event. Only a handful of the top 50 are in this event. I'm going to list out the top 9 guys in our occupied model this week. You can give me a blurb about each of the guys as we go through each one to get some context to their model ratings. Number 1 is Kurt Kitayama. He's the number 2 highest priced guy on DraftKings, and should be pretty popular this week.
You should be, and it's definitely my kind of week. I am a sicko. If you don't know me, I've turned Brian into a golf sicko over the last couple of years. So definitely a week I'm looking forward to. So Kitayama was second here previously. He's number 1 in the field of long irons and ball striking. He's obviously a top 10 distance player. He's one of the longest players on tour. Like, it should be a great fit, and the fact that he was second here and his only other start here would tell you that this is probably a good course fit. So I expect him to be very popular this week, for good reason.
And this is another course where we're looking at distance once again, like we were last week at Torrey Pines. Different reasons, though, right, Nero? And again, I'm not a golf course architect guy, but these are paspalum greens and fairways, and it's my understanding that the ball doesn't roll out as much on these; it's a little stickier. So we're looking for carry distance once again, right?
Absolutely. The paspalum is the grass they use a lot on coastal venues. So if you think of it, coastal venues very exposed to the wind, and it helps not have the ball rolling with the wind at high speeds. With this type of grass, it tends to be a little bit longer as well. So the greens are not usually ever going to be overly quick with paspalum, and they roll a little bit differently than the traditional Bermuda or bent greens that we see most often throughout the year on the tour.
Number 2,
Uh,
as we
yeah,
continue the sickos theme, is Alex Smalley. Number 2 in the model, 8,700 on DraftKings. And Nero, I was looking through the model's inputs, and I know he fits these kind of courses really well. But what else stands out about Smalley this week?
yeah, I mean, he's missed his last 2 cuts here, so there's always a negative, especially by the way in these weak field events. Like, you do have to get comfortable with paying prices for guys that have warts and for things that you just you wouldn't normally be comfortable with in a real field event. But so Smalley has 3 starts here. He's finished 6th and he's missed 2 cuts. By the way, that's Alex Smalley as a golfer in a nutshell. Fairly high upside, pretty low floor. And that fits really well for him this week. Number 2 in ball striking, number 8 in scoring. So that's birdie making, bogey avoidance combined. And as we said already, good course fit as evidenced by that 6th place finish. Is he going to be consistent? No, but he's got a chance to win you GPP, and that's all we can ask for this week.
Absolutely. Let's monitor his ownership. I've already seen his name being thrown around by some tipsters already. An early market move. Let's make sure his ownership doesn't get out of control at $8,700. Next is Rico Hoey, who is 7,200 on DraftKings, our first truly cheap guy in the top of the model.
Yeah, great long iron player. I think he's number 3 in this field for long irons, number 6 in scoring. So again, the long iron thing. This is the type of course that's a little more open off the tee, very long. But for the design and the shape of the holes, there's a lot of forced carries with long irons into the greens, meaning that this is usually, when it's all said and done, one of the top 5 courses on the year for approach shots over 175 yards.
Mm.
So guys who hit their long irons really well are going to pop in this type of event. That goes for Rika Hoey that Brian mentioned, who's number 3 in long irons, and then the next one on the list, Chan Kim, who's number 2 with his long iron play. So definitely something we're going to be targeting this week.
Yeah, Rico Hoey, Chan Kim, Alex Smalley. Again, like I said, this is true sickos week, and yeah, as you said, I contracted the sickness, and I'm fully on board playing all these guys in PGA DFS, and the model is certainly picking up on how the importance of long iron play in this event. Next, after Hoey and Kim, rounding out the top 5, I need to get your intake here, or input here at Nero, is Scott Piercy, who I've not seen near the top of the model. God knows if ever, but what is he doing in this field, and why is he ranking so highly?
Scott Piercy used to have full status on tour. I believe he has some one of those partial statuses or more geared towards the Corn Ferry. His starts so far this year have been on the Corn Ferry. He's played this event 3 times, so this will be his fourth start here. So he does have experience. Made 2 out of 3 cuts, 33rd and 39th in his other two finishes. Uh, Pretty good ball striking ranks, and has a good score for his putting variance, meaning we should get some positive regression for him coming up here shortly. Also, a good week for a lot of these tweener type of guys who are used to having status on tour, don't have it anymore. They know this is a big week for them. He's going to be treating this like it's a huge event for him, whereas the average player might not, maybe they're taking a little mental break while they're spending a little time on the coast this week, but not guys like Piercy. He'll be grinding full bore.
That's a really good point too. And I got to say, looking at his DraftKings profile picture here, Nero, a little bit too much gray in the beard to be playing the Corn Ferry Tour, perhaps.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. And that's why he doesn't want to be playing the Corn Ferry Tour anymore.
Well, there you go. All right, next on the list in our model is a guy we've played a lot so far this year and has performed pretty well. It's Sam Stevens.
Yeah, we liked him a lot, Torrey Pines, because of his strong driving. He's number 2 in scoring, and obviously a very good course fit. If you're a good course fit at Torrey Pines, you're going to be a good course fit here. He played well last week. He finished second at Torrey Pines when the original event 3 or 4 weeks ago. So, good player, should be a very good course fit.
Next, we have Steven Yeager, who may be one of the most talented golfers in this field. Nearly won the Sony Open earlier in the season. But again, a player who's been playing in most of the events is going to rate highly in this event, Nero, and that's no exception for Steven Yeager.
Yeah, absolutely one of the top players in the field, just given his pedigree. Uh, on top of the fact that he's got 3 starts here, never finished worse than 18th. He was third last year, so he's got third, 18th, and 15th. So on top of everything else, he clearly likes this place and it's a good fit for his game. So it should be popular this week for good reason.
Next is a guy who had a lot of talent a while ago, took some time off. Now is back and has been playing pretty well, especially the last couple of weeks. It's Michael Kim, and again, a great follow on Twitter. Nero, he was talking about how he got a specific lesson for his short game, and it certainly helped him out at the Phoenix Open around the greens. And he's talking about the confidence in his game. And you can talk about Kim some more, but I think this is a good testament to there are a lot of things that happen off the course that we will never know about unless they tweet about it for PGA golfers. And when we see line moves or other instances of reasons to play this guy, it may be something that we don't know about. We talk about this all the time with the market moves, but something like Kim getting a short game lesson is happening all over the tour, and we only hear about 1% of them.
Exactly. And he's made a long road back. I believe he won John Deere 3 years ago, 4 years ago, like scoring record, and then just like fell off the planet. Couldn't keep the ball on the planet, and has been grinding his way back over these last few years. Been playing very well over the last 6 to 8 months. Seems like this short game work that he's been putting in has kind of put him over the top a little bit. Played very well last week at Torrey Pines. Not overly long, but he's very good with his long irons and good with his scoring. So, and again, higher quality player than, most of the people in this field.
Absolutely. And finally, rounding out the top 9 of our model is Adam Svensson, who the model has been a fan of for a long time. And generally, when we see the model being a fan of a guy for a long time, typically they pop eventually. Whether that'll be this week will be the week for Adam Svensson remains to be seen, Nero. But again, another great long iron player.
Yeah, good, very good ball striker. Not great, not as good with the short game. Has had good finishes in the past. Again, I would probably consider him to be slightly higher quality player than most of the folks in this field. Hasn't necessarily had a lot of high finishes lately, but he's made a lot of his cuts. I think he's made about 70% of his cuts since September, which is at real PGA Tour events, not at Corn Ferry events or DP World Tour events. So that alone escalates him. And like you mentioned, very good long term player.
And you mentioned his around the green, and this is a week where we can de-emphasize around the green, right? Because from what I understand, again, I've never played on Pass Ballon, but I guess it's really easy to chip off of and play around the green because of the way the ball sits up on the Pass Ballon grass. Is that right?
Yeah, it should sit up a little bit more, not quite as much as it sits up like on Zoysia, but it should be good. And I think really the main thing why you can kind of de-emphasize around the green is just because the grass keeps things slower.
Mm.
So it keeps things slower on the green, keeps things slower around the green, and it just increases their margin for error when they're chipping and putting. And if you're going to increase the margin of error for these guys, look out. They're gonna do very well.
I mean, it sounds like we need to play on more pass palm if that's the case. That would certainly
Yeah,
help.
I need to play on Fast Palm 24/7 is the way that actually goes.
Yeah, exactly. All right, moving on. This next segment has been extremely spot on, as we knew it would be. Not to pat ourselves on the back, but we've done the research. We know that there are certain sets of industry projections that are pretty sharp, but also they cause increases in ownership in high dollar GPPs and smaller GPPs that are more than $3 on DraftKings and FanDuel where pros can play. Nero, who do we expect this week? And again, we see these guys sometimes double, triple the ownership in high dollar contests, but at least 5 to 10% more than they are in the flagship GPPs. But which golfers do we expect the industry projections to cause to be more popular than your typical ownership projections may indicate in these contests?
A lot of crossover this week for the DraftKings and FanDuel lists. So the four players that I have on both: Taylor Moore, Joe Highsmith, Rasmus Højgaard, and Kevin Yu. And that also tells you a little bit about what kind of week this is. When those are your four crossover players on both DraftKings and FanDuel. I have one more for the list on DraftKings: Patrick Rogers. Obviously, if you watched last week, he was, had chances to win. He was all over the top of the leaderboard, all over the coverage all weekend. And then on FanDuel, the two that I have there that I don't have on DraftKings would be Vincent Norman and Aaron Rye.
Aaron Ryan, Vincent Norman. Okay, cool. So yeah, if you remember this list from the past couple of weeks, it was what Scheffler. It was
Yeah,
other guys in
exactly.
the 8 9K range. Much different. In Nero, I would say we always talk about fading chalk and PGA DFS just because the inherent nature, the inherent variance of the nature of this game. But that is bumped to 100 when we have lesser quality players in the field, and we have guys that aren't as consistent as the top players, and they approach 20, 30% ownership in some contests. No matter what our model says, what market say, you have to consider fading them just because of that fact.
Yeah, absolutely. This is 100% a very good week for game theory. By the way, it doesn't mean that some of the higher owned players, won't do well. Like Kurt Kitayama, expect him to be one of the highest owned players. I expect him to do very well. I think it's more about the players kind of in the mid level where you're like, oh, okay, yeah, he's pretty good. Like you mentioned, Alex Smalley, right? Like we like the metrics, very inconsistent as a player. So if Alex Smalley starts to get a lot of ownership, would make a lot of sense to be underneath Alex Smalley in comparison to the field. If he didn't have a lot of ownership, then it would make sense to be over Alex Smalley because Alex Smalley is an inconsistent golfer, and PGA DFS is the most inconsistent DFS sport there is. So, any chance on those players that are below, maybe the top three or four in the field, and that's it this week. If the ownership seems out of control, it is absolutely a great week to be under and just let the results be what they are.
Absolutely. So our initial ownership projections are up on the site, occupyfantasy.com, in our model and in our builder. We'll continue to update that throughout the week. So make sure, again, because it's only Tuesday morning when we are recording this, we won't have finalized ownership projections until late Wednesday night. And that's where you're going to make a lot of your decisions for PGA DFS. So make sure you check back with our model and our plug and our builder for the latest projections there. Now, Nero, again, because it is so early, we can't put as much faith in these early market moves that we've seen so far. But again, we do these videos for a couple of reasons. One, we do these videos to give context to our members at occupyfantasy.com so they can get some context to the plug and the model. It just gets as much information as they want. But we also do this for people who are not going to pay for content. They need free content out there. They want some picks and they want some early analysis. And that's a big reason why we do this as well. So we want to throw these names out there. And if you don't have any other projections or you don't have any paid content, you can still use the top plays in our model we've listed so far, the high stakes bumps players, and these early market moves to your advantage in your PGA DFS lineups. However, if you want that extra edge, make sure you do check out occupyfantasy.com where you can get our rankings, our write-ups, and our lineup builder, and as well as the latest market moves by Wednesday evening. Nero, I'm going to list the guys I've seen where their odds to win have improved at least one respected sportsbook so far. This is nowhere near our coveted trifecta status, nowhere near the status of all the great plays we saw last week. But I'll name the guys, and maybe just point out a couple and any highlights you might want to say about those guys. And this list so far, it's 9 or 10 guys. It's littered with guys who either have won or had success on previous tours, or are high ranking in the model, or are big ball strikers, which is something we're always looking for. The list so far this week is DP World Tours Matteo Manacero, Samuel Stevens, Kevin Roy, Kurt Kitayama, Ricky Castillo, Corn Ferry Tour, Henrik Norlander, Alex Smalley, who we've talked about many times so far, Harry Hall, who was hot to start this season, and then Will Gordon. So, any of these names stick out to you for any one reason or the other?
Yeah, but Manacero sticks out. He was a DP World Tour winner last year. On the surface, not necessarily a great course fit just because he's not a bomber, but he is playing on the PGA Tour this year. So he's played twice, made the cut at the American Express, made the cut at the Original Farmers, another event that emphasizes distance. In fact, he finished 25th. Even though he was down the field in the distance, because he's a very good iron player. He was also a very high level amateur player who came on very strongly in the beginning of his career on the DP World Tour, fell off, and now over the last 6 to 8 months has really had a resurgence in his game, especially in the fall. He was just racking off top fives on the DP World Tour in their biggest events. He was fourth at the BMW PGA. He was third at the Irish Open. He was sixth at the British Masters. Like those are pretty quality fields. Like those fields would put this field to shame because of all the high level European players and the number of Americans that would go over for those events. So again, someone that sticks out to me because he's higher quality, higher ceiling, we'll say, player than the vast majority of people in this field. And he's been playing on the PGA Tour. So he's not just like coming over as a one time thing. He's been playing, he's looking to play on the PGA Tour this year. So again, like we mentioned with Piercy earlier, like these guys are also very cognizant of the season and where things are, where things stand, what's a good event for them to like really get a lot of points, get up on the list so they can make the signature events in the future, that type of thing. Like this would be a week where I would expect Manacero to have full focus and be very, very deeply looking at trying to make a good run this week.
Really good insight there on a DP World Tour player, Nero. Any of these other guys, Kevin Roy, Castillo, these Corn Ferry guys, or Will Gordon, who I don't know much about, but is top 50 in all metrics in this field. Anything else stick out about those guys that maybe those listeners out there may not know about these guys that they don't hear every week?
Yeah, Harry Hall stuck out to me. I have him ranked very high in this field, and if you look at his last finishes, now he missed the cut at the Waste Management, and only like he was the very bottom of the Pebble Beach, right? So signature event, he was 58th. But you look at his finishes before that: 21st American Express, 10th at the Sony Open, 8th at the Century. Now go back to 2024. 14th Worldwide Technology, 13th at the Zozo, 9th at the Shriners, 35th at the Black Desert, 18th at the BMW PGA. Anyway, you keep going. You see what you see there. A lot of high finishes. Should be a theoretical, pretty good course fit. He's pretty long. He was 33rd and 10th here in his two starts here, so I expect it to be a good venue for him. So he definitely, stuck out to me as someone whose name I think most casual players wouldn't know, but someone who's actually played really good golf over the last 6 to 8 months in high quality fields.
Absolutely. All right. So for the final list of market movers and our trifecta plays, make sure you check out our daily plug at occupyfantasy.com, as well as our Discord, where we'll post the final list as well. That'll be posted Wednesday evening. Occupyfantasy.com is where you can get access to that. And again, like I said, we do this for people who aren't going to pay for content as well. If you want to show support for this free content, all you got to do is click subscribe on this video. It's free to do so. It helps us out, mutually beneficial. Also let you know when we post our videos. Give us a thumbs up and drop a comment. Those are the easiest ways to show free support to Occupy Fantasy so we can continue making these videos for you. Finally, Nero, let's close out with some Showdown and some weather notes. We've been pretty spot on with some of these notes to start the year. And as we were doing some digging, we found a pretty significant edge, I believe, in early versus late tee times and Showdown contests for this particular course. Can you tell me about it and maybe why it might be the case?
Yeah, so if you look at the general wind forecast right now, looks pretty calm across all four days. So I'd expect it to be, calmer. Um, we do notice though on most coastal locations, the wind picks up a little bit more in the afternoon. This particular location, this is Brian Jester special right here. When you look back through the last 3 years, so if you go average early tee time for this event for their advantage, zero point 0.8 strokes, 1.2 strokes, and 1.8 strokes because of the wind. Now, obviously, you've had different wind forecasts all of those years, but it would tell me one thing, which is this is a coastal venue where the wind picks up in the afternoon, similar to others. It's not a traditional coastal venue in the way that the course is created, and even necessarily where it sits, because it's not exactly right on the coast. So there must be something about the way that this place is located, where it is located, that enhances that afternoon wind. And again, it might not be a ton, but if you're playing in a dome in the morning where there's literally like no wind or maybe 2 to 3 miles an hour, and then you play in the afternoon where there's 8 to 10 miles an hour, that's not a lot of wind, but it is different. And it is worse than playing with the 2 mile an hour breeze that has literally no effect on the ball whatsoever. So I would definitely be favoring the morning players if I'm playing Showdown this week.
Yeah, and I think I was looking back at some of the press conference transcripts from the past few years, and John Rahm in particular, both years that he finished high, won and finished second in this event, he was talking about how much different the course plays when it's windy. And Nero, I know you're a big proponent of reading the transcripts and seeing what players are saying about the course. And I think when we have the data and then we have quotes from actual players to back that up, I think that's when we can marry the two together to have a pretty sound showdown strategy.
Yeah, absolutely. And there will be, I'll read through the transcripts, and anything that sticks out to me, I always throw in the Wednesday update when it gets put in there. So, be on the lookout for that if you're an Occupy subscriber.
Absolutely. So that'll do it for this video. Appreciate Nero's time as always. I appreciate you watching to the very end of the video. We're going to try to keep doing these videos for the rest of the golf season. As long as we keep getting 1,000 or more views, and we got that the past couple of weeks, let's see if we can push that to 2,000 views. How can we do that? Give us a thumbs up, subscribe to the channel, drop a comment, and watch it all the way to the end of the video. Any questions you have, we will answer them in the comments throughout the next couple of days. And again, the daily plug will be up Tuesday night or Wednesday morning. The Wednesday update will be in there. Guess what? On Wednesday, Occupy Model is already up, and the Builder is up as well with all of our rankings for DraftKings and FanDuel. And ownership will continue to be updated all the way through Wednesday evening, overnight into Thursday morning. So for Nero, I'm Brian. Thank you everyone for listening. We appreciate you, and good luck and enjoy the Mexico Open.